Since 1999, I have been a fan of Shenmue. I'll never forget that feeling when I played Shenmue 1 for the first time. It felt like home, like I finally found peace in my young life. And then Shenmue 2 got cancelled in North America on the Dreamcast. However, I kept seeing imports of it in stores, but it was always too expensive for me to get. This undying need to play the second game made my heart light on fire each time I saw it. Then, the Xbox version came out, and I got to continue the adventure. I locked myself in my room for days. I faked going to school just to play Shenmue 2 without anyone knowing. I couldn't let go of that feeling of solitude I got from that game, when everything else in my life was honestly not going so well. And then, the adventure suddenly stopped, and my heart continued to burn to find out what happens next. I can't describe in words how the past 18 years felt. All I could do was scream. And then a miracle happened. During a very, very bad time in my life, the planets aligned and Yu Suzuki did the unthinkable.
Shenmue ってもどこ行っても、3はどうなった ?3 はどうなったいつ3出るんだとか可能性を探ってきた結果キックスターターでシェンムー3を作ることに決めました。
As you can tell, I have been waiting to make this video for a long time. So strap in, friends, for this is my review of Shenmue 3.
Holy shit. I don't usually do like quick reaction videos, but oh my god, I'm sure you all
I don't care with Batman, man. I was gonna get a mortgage, something this year. Well, place and that. All my money's gone to Kickstarter.
This review will be broken up into 4 sections. Section 1, Graphics. Section 2, Music, Dub, and Audio. Section 3, Gameplay. And Section 4, Story. So let's begin. Section 1, Graphics. Shenmue 3 has a unique middle ground on terms of its graphical style. It feels like an interesting transitional look between the graphics of the first 2 games, while still managing to pump out visuals that look stunning. The models in the game have an interesting blockiness to them, almost as if they took the wrapped textures of Shenmue 1 and 2 and resculpted them in 3D from scratch. I honestly enjoyed seeing it done this way. Sure, the character models could have used some more polish, but for what the team had to work with, I find it to be at a level of detail greatly appreciated. For the main characters, I feel their level of detail is acceptable. Ryo and Ren, however, feel a bit off, but Shenhua I feel is perfect. The environments in Shenmue 3 are breathtaking. During my first playthrough, there were times where I just put my controller down and took in just how gorgeous some of the scenery was. This goes for all areas of the game. The cave, BAILU village, and Niaowu all have a lot of visually stunning moments to offer. I personally did not expect Shenmue 3 to look this good given the budget it had. Big kudos to the Shenmue 3 team for being able to pull that off. Shenmue 1 and 2 were very much known for their focus on micro detail and realism, and I'm happy to say that I feel Shenmue 3 has a good grasp on that. To better explain, let's break down the micro details in both major areas. BAILU Village. BAILU Village focuses a lot on natural beauty, with each visual set piece having a focus on natural developments. You have the stream going under the Verdant Bridge. You have the sunrise over BAILU Village each morning, the Shenmue tree glistening in the wind, the meadows and forests seemingly existing in tranquility. BAILU Village just leaves you a sense that this is home. Niaowu. Niaowu contains the opposite of natural development, as it focuses on emulating culture while also showcasing a touristy life. It feels like a town fabricated to sell you stuff, kind of like a real touristy location. However, it also feels like it hides a subculture to it. I'm not sure how to explain it completely, but this is the vibe that I got. The micro details really are showcased everywhere. The shops all have items on their shelves. Their color schemes and architecture convey a story that makes each shop feel unique and rich. Combine that with the more traditional parts of Niaowu with their focus on traditional imagery to convey a forgotten town with rich history, and you have yourself in the subconscious of the player. I feel Niaowu perfectly captures this concept. It has an underlying feeling that the touristy part of the town is there to cover up a potentially more sinister culture underneath. When it comes to the graphics, I am blown away by Shenmue 3. I honestly didn't expect the game to look this good. I could just sit for hours with a VR headset and just take in the scenery. Hopefully maybe one day we can make that happen. I feel my favorite moment was when I got to see the sunrise in BAILU Village for the first time. I honestly put my controller down and shed a tear as I could see the love put into the environments, making them unique and downright beautiful. Section 2. Music, dubs, and audio. Music has always been a staple of the Shenmue series. Each track we have heard in this series thus far has always had a feeling to it. Whether it is Shenmue 1, where the free tracks would represent the current tone of the story in that time of gameplay, or in Shenmue 2, where the preset tracks would describe the underlying culture of the area you are in. Shenmue is no stranger to musical descriptions of atmosphere. In Shenmue 3, this is definitely both in place and not in place. I will explain. Shenmue 3's music can be categorized in a few bucket lists. Tracks we haven't heard before, tracks some of us have heard from the Shenmue Online OST or from pre-release content, tracks that are full uncompressed versions of music from the past games, and tracks that seem to be the same as previously used tracks. I could go on and on about the music in Shenmue 3, but I will make it short. Shenmue 3 is a vast amount of music, over 300 songs, and I love them. I think my favorite musical moment was when they used the Saturn footage theme for the Niaowu opening. I literally screamed. Not to mention, we now have a name for this track, as well as a second variation of it. For years, this track seemed so mysterious, but now it is here and documented. I think the only musically related complaint I have is that some tracks are weirdly placed. However, this could be subjective because most of the tracks I can think of are reused tracks, so I feel my love for the original locations for the tracks is skewing my opinion of them. in Shenmue 3. I am aware that it was stated that Shenmue team has only used, like 40% of the music that was actually created for the series? With how many tracks are reused, my mind still wonders what the new tracks will sound like in Shenmue 4. At the time of this writing, I have only played through the entire game with the English dub. Not much to say here except that the language structure definitely feels like Shenmue. The dub feels more tuned to American English slang, Corey still sounds like Ryo, and the overall voice acting quality is pretty damn good, so nice work on that. As for the audio, simply put, I feel the ambience fits the areas very well. If you stand in a single spot anywhere in the game, I feel the player can sense that it is a living world. This is something I feel is still very hard to do in video games, so big kudos to the Shenmue 3 team for that. One thing I'd like to ask them to improve though is the volume of the footsteps. Ryo feels way too floaty since his steps are so low volume. This honestly seems kind of like a stupid complaint that I have, however, I'm sure you will feel a difference if it was louder. Just a little constructive criticism. Part 3. Gameplay. When first playing Shenmue 3, one thing becomes clear. This game is definitely a Shenmue game. You walk around, you talk to people, you train, you live out life. You collect capsule toys, play mini games, and you battle opponents. Shenmue 3 has the ingredients of being a Shenmue game, which is really awesome. However, I do have some constructive criticism in this area. Shenmue 3's gameplay definitely has some shortcomings in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this game. However, I try not to let that blind me. The largest complaint I have about the gameplay is the stamina system. In Shenmue 3, you have a stamina bar that also acts as your health bar when fighting opponents. I don't mind this concept that it is realistic, but I wish it didn't deplete so fast. If I could give some advice, please lower the depletion rate or remove the system entirely. However, without the stamina system, I feel the player could progress way too quickly. So it is a double-edged sword of a recommendation. One other thing I think could be done as well is maybe instead of having the stamina outside the game, why not just have a contiguous health bar for the fighting? So your health would remain the same between two battles unless you rest or eat some food. Maybe that could be a better way to do it. Other than that, I enjoyed the game pretty heavily. It felt just like how I felt the game should play. The inclusion of a modern 360 control scheme, unlike the first two games, was a nice bonus. I honestly don't mind the older game's controls, but I know that this is an unpopular opinion. I guess another complaint I have, now that I think about it, is the QTEs kind of felt a little weird. In Shenmue 1 and 2, the QTEs correspond to the exact movements you would make in free battle. I feel Shenmue 3 may have lost this concept a little bit. One last complaint I have is a pretty oddball one. I really don't like the musical transition between areas of places. It just feels a bit weird. Adam Koralik explains this well in his review, so I suggest checking his video out in the cards. But pretty much the lack of loading screens between areas in most parts of the game, but still keeping different music pieces per area, sounds like a good development on the formula, but I feel its execution could have been a bit more polished. Overall though, I loved how Shenmue 3 played. I found most of the systems super addicting to where I enjoyed training a lot. I never train in Shenmue 1 or Shenmue 2, so this is a first for me. So now, let's talk about the story of Shenmue 3. I originally was gonna make a separate video about this part of the review, but honestly, I just can't wait any longer to talk about this. After watching many reviews of Shenmue 3, one thing is stated commonly. Shenmue 3 is stated to not progress the story far enough. Well, what if I told you this is not entirely true? So hear me out. To understand Shenmue's story, we need to rewind back to the older days of Virtual Fighter RPG and Project Berkeley. We need to understand the timeline of things. You see, the story structure of Shenmue is by far one of the most complex elements of the series, aside from its development history. So here is a quick recap of the history of the Shenmue story timeline. Shenmue originally started as a tech demo called Man in the Peach Tree. This was a single story. Then it evolved into Virtual Fighter RPG, where it was split into 11 chapters. Then somewhere in the midst of the internet, an image floated around showing that it was 16 chapters. Shenmue 1 covering chapter 1, Shenmue 2 covering chapters 3 3 through the first half of 5, Chapter 2 being left out. This is the confusing part. It's also stated that Shenmue 1 is Chapter 1 and Shenmue 2 includes Chapter 2, but that scope of a chapter in the 11 chapter timeline is more broad. Do you follow me so far? I know this is a bit confusing. So for Shenmue 3, it is stated that the game takes elements from future chapters and bakes them into the current position of the timeline. This is probably due to many reasons: creative changes, modernization, cutting story out, etc. So this means that Shenmue 3 kind of talks about story not supposed to be known about till what would have been the later games. I feel I know which story elements these are, but that is for another video in the future. Okay, so with that out of the way, I want to try to convey to you more understanding of the Shenmue story from an encyclopedic standpoint. I have spent countless hours the past 18 years studying these games and their real-life counterparts to gain an understanding of the story Yu Suzuki is really trying to tell. Of course, this is all pure speculation, but just a side of me feels it's on the right path. To me, Shenmue feels like more than just a revenge story. Sure, revenge may play a key component in this story, but I feel there is something larger. Throughout Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2, there seems to be hints related to more divine events occurring. Shenhua's speech, Master Chen's talk about Chi-Yu, the idea of Tente, Master Baihu, Shenhua seemingly being magical, more on that later. All of these topics showcase that maybe what we have seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg. This is especially obvious when we look at the Saturn footage of Project Berkeley. We see events not shown in the games yet. One important one is when we see Shenhua's doing some sort of ki blast when in distress. Oh boy, does this correlate to Shenmue 3. The story of Shenmue 3, in my opinion, does two specific things. One, it continues the chapter that Shenmue 2 leaves on, and two, it hints to the player of what is to come. This is in turn places Shenmue 3 as the training story to get Ryo to a more competent fighting level in the lore of the overall Shenmue timeline. Let's focus on point number 1. Shenmue 3 starts right where Shenmue 2 leaves off. We have Ryo and Shenhua in the cave. They leave the cave on their way to BAILU village to go search for Shenhua's stepfather. We find out the historical origins of the mirrors, their connection to the stonemasons, how the Chi-Yu men is looking for those stonemasons, and the descendants of the one who made the mirrors and how they steal the stonemasons. We then go to Niaowu to learn about pretty much nothing except for Niaosun and how she wants to take over the Chi-Yu men. We then fight Lan Di, and pretty much nothing else occurs in the story, right? Nope. Totally inaccurate. Now for the second point that I feel so many reviewers may have missed. Bear with me as things are about to get weird. As I stated before and in many of my videos, Shenmue's story is shadowed in much mystery. One of the biggest mysteries is just what the hell is wrong with Shenhua? What do I mean? Well, let's dig in a little bit. Shenhua seems to be important as we know she is. She recites the prophecy, she is in Ryo's dreams, she speaks to him through his mind in the Shenmue 2 bad ending. She also seems to manipulate people in ways we do not understand just yet, among other things. Shenmue 3 focuses hard on this topic, but not in an obvious way. It is up to the player to piece it together. I really want to do a video on this topic specifically in the future, so for now, I will just run off some things to keep in your mind for when you replay Shenmue 3. Here are some topics. Shenhua can talk to animals. Shenhua tells Ryo that sometimes when she dreams of her ancestors, and when she wakes up, it is like she lived 1,000 birthdays. Yu Suzuki revealed that she has the power to connect to her ancestors. Shenhua twice in Shenmue 3 outright made a character turn back on their very strongly willed opinion or action with seemingly no actions on her end. No, she does not kick the thug in the balls. Come on, people. In the temple, there is literally a tablet from Shenhua's stepfather that reads, "I hope Shenhua is ready for when that day comes." I would really love to know what he means by that. This all leads up to the fact that something isn't right about Shenhua. Something just isn't normal with her. To anyone who says Shenmue 3 doesn't give away enough story, I welcome you now to these details I shared, and I hope you can realize how in-depth it goes into story elements that will dictate the future of the overall story in a way that Yu Suzuki would do so, through hidden details. That is all I will focus on regarding the story for now. So, to end this review, I will now list some things that I feel could have been improved on, as well as provide some observations that just kind of made me puzzled. So, let's go down the list. I wish the cave was a playable area. It is only a cutscene, however, we can explore it via debug options in homebrew free cams. The next one would be, the Sword of 7 Stars is not in the intro to 3. Was it retconned? Also, Ryo seems to have no clue who Chai is, which really felt weird. I feel like he has fought Chai enough to at least kind of, call out to him when he sees him as somebody he remembers. And speaking of Chai kind of feels shoehorned in. If you look at him at face value in the game, it's really only when you think about it, like when it makes sense. This kind of will be for an upcoming video. The next thing would be, the story in Shenmue 3 is hard to understand for people who only play the game once and go from like A to B without really digging into the details. This is cool for hardcore fans, but it really is a disservice to those who aren't, which is really unfortunate because his story is fantastic. Speaking of characters, Ren feels too quickly inserted. I would have loved to see their bromance be more prominent in the story. Also, the phone calls don't feel right compared to the personalities of the characters in their respective games. Like, I don't know, when I heard like the scripts and I heard like how the characters sounded, it just didn't sound right to me. The next thing would be, Niao-san's introduction is so anticlimactic that I legitimately got kind of mad. She is such a legendary mystery of a character in the community that she feels just so unimportant in the game, which is really unfortunate. However, I feel this is more of a budget restriction, as I know Yu Suzuki wouldn't have wanted it this way. Speaking of the Chiyu men, the fight with Lan Di really just kind of felt like fan service, that it felt like it was there for just no reason. I think a conversation between Ryo and Lan Di would have been much better, but that is just me. However, I think with the realistic timing between the events of Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 3, it's understandable that Ryo would be really mad still. The next thing, the ending, honestly kind of feels entirely unfinished. However, this feels more due to the budget than real game design philosophy. So that's about it. Other than the points above, I feel Shenmue 3 is an amazing continuation of the series. Sure, a part of me would have rather seen it properly released in its original form on the Dreamcast. I feel that game would have been similar but much more in-depth with many of the things that Shenmue 3 as we have it now focuses on, really just due to budgetary restrictions. Despite that, Shenmue 3 in its current form really fills the hole in my heart that was left when Shenmue 3 was seemingly cancelled on the Dreamcast and Xbox. I absolutely love Shenmue 3. I'm obsessed with it in ways that I can't even describe in words. I hope that after this video you may have a better understanding of this game. Shenmue 3 is a very special game. Its release says a lot about how passionate fans can unite under a singular love to make things happen. It shows the dedication and undying love from its creator and his team. It shows that no matter what, when you love something, you never give up on it. And as always, thanks for watching.